Good morning, everybody. Welcome to another Mortgage Coach Tuesday call. Everybody on this call, be proud that you have the industry's best mortgage app, the best tool to help families make great decisions. So every Tuesday, I bring in someone awesome, someone amazing, speakers, leaders, top mortgage professionals. You know, part of the thing that I love so much about what we do, it's our community. You know, we've got the best of the best representing Mortgage Coach, which really gives us a great opportunity to bring in great leaders and speakers. So this month we've had an incredible lineup. This week is no exception. Last week we had Todd Duncan. If you haven't listened to that video, it was one of the best. I mean, I've interviewed Todd, I can't remember how many times, and last week's call really connected. We've got a lot of great feedback. I actually added it to one of our all-time best interviews and best of 2016. So if you're a manager, you're a leader, you have a team, even if you watched it, make sure your team watches it. Great piece of leadership. One of the big takeaways in the way Todd told the story, added value, is he talked about high trust story selling with Mortgage Coach. Said how it was one of the biggest disruptors to really unleash your sales success. I happen to agree with him. The concept of story selling when you're meeting with a realtor, you're telling them a story about how you helped a family, you're using the Mortgage Coach app to walk through that strategy. It's a must-do. Everybody needs to learn to do it. For next week, we have two amazing guests, Kelly Zitlow and Catherine Pedersen. I interviewed her a few weeks ago, but we're gonna talk about how they're doing CD training and how they're just doing training, you know, with realtors, how they're doing events in their local markets and how that's positioning. So don't miss that call. Today we have two amazing guests. I have interviewed Byran Kreuzberger multiple times. Byran, your last call that we did together, I think, has been watched over almost 300-400 times, and the first interview we did together is trending towards 2,000 views after the call. So really appreciate all the contribution and value to our community.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm excited to be here.
Well, for this first half of the call, think of it as you and I being co-hosts. We are going to together interview Rene Rodriguez. Rene has been a good friend of mine for more than a decade. I first met Rene in the loan toolbox world. Rene, welcome to the call. I'm excited to have our first Mortgage Coach interview together.
Thanks, Dave. It's been a long time and looking forward to it.
Yeah, no doubt. I'm really looking forward to having you in this community. So for those of you who do not know Rene, he's trained and led, mentored, coached hundreds, if not thousands, of mortgage professionals. But the other thing that I think makes him special and unique is he's also, you know, facilitated all types of training, all types of change management initiatives with corporate America. So he brings a professionalism to our industry that I think is uncommon. Of course, Rene is an expert in our industry. You know, he's been on the cover of the Niche. He's been in, I don't even know how many magazines. I always read your articles, Rene. I either learn something new or you remind me about what we should be doing. So before we kick this off and I hand off the desktop share for you, if you could just tell everybody a little bit about, you know, your passion as a trainer and change agent in this industry, and then we'll get into the prepared strategies.
You know, it's first of all, thanks for those words. And what my passion, Dave, is sales. I believe is what turned my life around when I got cut from basketball, and when I realized that basketball was a sport that I could only be as good as coaches would allow me to be. I could work as hard as I want, but if I didn't, and I wasn't allowed to play, it didn't matter. And I met one of my mentors who was a CEO of a $25 billion company, and asked him. I said, if I want to be in your shoes when I grow up, what's the one thing I got to learn now? I was 18 years old. And he said, Rene, you learn how to sell. If you learn how to sell, you'll always be employed. And at 18, I didn't ask any questions. I went and pursued that and realized that salesmanship, professional selling is something that truly makes the world go around. It makes lives happier. It solves problems. And the mortgage industry is a ripe arena for getting back to sales professionalism. I think low interest rates have gotten a lot of us away from what it really means to create value. And so today I'm just going to be talking about the basic things that successful people do that are also non-negotiable. So these aren't new ideas, but these are non-negotiable things that I think a lot of people forget about. And so We're going to be covering a lot of those things, and I think it's going to be great to have Brian following because he's going to get into some real tactical, implementable things that I think are going to be really exciting.
Fantastic. So, by the way, you heard Rene as he teed it up, non-negotiables. I've interviewed hundreds of the nation's most successful mortgage professionals, and there are some common themes, and one of those themes is just consistency. They have consistent ways that they deliver amazing experiences to borrowers and realtors and referral partners, and they do them consistently. So, Rene, rock it out. We see your blue screen, and we look forward to having you go through this. And again, Brian, I want to remind you, if you have some color to add or some questions for Rene, don't hesitate to jump in.
All right, great.
Awesome. Awesome. Yeah, absolutely. If you have any questions. So really what we're talking about is professional selling. So I want to come back to that because it's a topic I think we've talked about and we hear about and we learn about. But I want to go back to a visual that was very powerful for me. And it's this concept of alignment. I think we all begin the year making goals. And we set out, this is what I want to achieve, whether it's financial, whether it's health related, whether it's, number of whatever our business plan is. And oftentimes what I see is that a lot of missing elements according to that goal just aren't in alignment. And so what I always begin with, before we talk about anything inspirational, before we talk about anything that really is implementable, we have to get and create some alignment. So what are those goals? And let's get really clear on those. But let's look at all of the things internally, not even just physically or mentally internally, but from a business and how you run your business to align to reach those goals. And so that goal of being a sales professional is really what I'm identifying and talking about here. And I always find it fascinating that there are some people that take a pride in being professional, and a lot of people they want to rename their title to a consultant or anything like that. But there's something beautiful about really claiming the fact that I'm in sales. I'm here to drive an idea. I'm here to communicate something I'm passionate about, and here to really, at the end of the day, create and uncover value. A lot of things I'm going to be talking about also apply to leadership and management. If you were to ask me, Dave, 5 years ago or maybe 10 years ago, what the biggest missing piece in the industry was, and I would have said it's salesmanship. People aren't selling because of the low interest rates. Now, if you were to ask me, we're missing sales leadership. We need sales leadership. This is the only industry that I've ever seen that pays and hires outside coaches to do the job of a sales manager. I've never seen it anywhere else. It boggles my mind. You hire coaches to hold you accountable to goals that should be set within an organization, but that's the job of a sales manager. And so I don't say that to criticize. I say that to say this is where we've come from, where we've promoted really high-producing sales professionals into becoming managers with no management training. And so we're covering a lot of different pieces here. So but you asked what my passion is, and it's really about aligning these different elements. So let's begin with a typical job description that sales professionals and loan officers get, and it's to go out and close deals. And I'll ask you, Dave or Brian, what's the big problem with this as a job description? Your job is to go close deals. I don't know if you guys are on mute.
Well, you got to get meetings. You got to know how to close deals. You got to understand the customer. You got to get trained on the product. You got to. I mean, there's so much more to it.
Right.
Right.
You could go on for everything. This is an end result. It's not a job description, and yet this is how most people have been trained. They say, well, I did it, and so they go out there and say, here, go out and close deals. And so the big missing piece is, how do I close deals? How do I bridge that gap? And so I begin with this concept that I call sales math. And every single business, every place I've gone, I start with this. And if I don't understand the sales mathematics of the industry or the product, it's really almost, it's not impossible for me to help, but it's not as valuable. So I want to begin with what I call mortgage sales math, and I'm going to give some numbers here. Number 1, 1.5, 2.5, 5, 25, and then 5 to 1. And I'll kind of let you think, if you're watching this, what do those numbers mean to you and what it is. Some people will say, well, okay, maybe that's, whatever your idea is going through. But this is the sales math that I begin with from a general standpoint. I've been doing this for now almost, it's close to 15 years now in the mortgage industry. So here's how it works. If you want one loan, typically you need about 1.5 applications. And if you want 1.5 applications, you need about 2.5 presentations. If you want 2.5 presentations, you need about 5 leads. If you want 5 leads, you have to talk to about 25 people, because for every 5 people you talk to, you get about 1 lead. This is the non-negotiable part. You can't have one without the other. If you're in a paper business and you want to make paper, you have to cut the tree down before you can mulch it. It's not negotiable. Those are dependent events. And that's, when I look at dependent events, process in mortgage is the same thing. And when we're talking about just selling, if you want a loan, you can't have a loan without an application, and you can't have an app without asking or presenting some level of value to somebody. And if you want to present, you got to have somebody that's interested. You got to get a lead, and to have a lead, you have to somehow talk to somebody. Now, if there's marketing efforts and things like that, that's fantastic. I'm not talking about marketing today, and if you're able to do that, that's great. As long as, this is one of my key points, don't use marketing as a cop-out to selling. And so something I just want to make sure that these are two very distinct skill sets that I see a big problem is a lot of people use marketing as a cop-out to selling, because selling, you got to be face-to-face, belly-to-belly, talking to people. So let's do the math behind that. So if the average commission is about $3,000, then every talk to, because you need 25 of those, is worth about $120. So I look at that and say, okay, so 120 bucks. If I have an income goal of 100,000, I got to talk to 833 people. That's 3.2 people a day, assuming 260 working days. Now, if I want to make 300,000, 350,000, that should be 300. It's 2,500 talk-tos. That's 9.6 talk-tos a day. So that's what we want to break this down to. And so I want to take that a little bit further, because we're really talking about metrics and the two types of metrics. And I spent a lot of time with Gallup organization. We rolled out up to close to 120,000 people, the Q12, when it was sort of just coming out there, and it's to measure employee engagement. But the lessons I got from the Gallup organization were priceless to me. And they talked to me about the different kinds of metrics, and obviously very simple things. The first kind of metric is what we call a leading indicator. And a leading indicator is a number today that predicts a number tomorrow. You see the little coal miner and the canary. We've heard that story about the coal miners going down and having a canary, and when that canary either was having a hard time breathing or would die, they knew that that was time for them to get out. That was their leading indicator. And so the next piece obviously is a lagging indicator that is a historical metric that tells you how you're doing. Now, I work with a lot of organizations, all the way from a loan officer, but mostly at the leadership level. And this is a big conversation, because you have some fantastic organizations out there like Movation, things that are gathering metrics. But the big disconnect I see is that companies have these amazing leading indicators that are for the company that are really, really powerful. But those leading indicators for a company are actually lagging indicators for the LO and for the sales manager. And so those indicators don't help the process. And so I kind of want to come back to that concept of, we all have different metrics and numbers that we need to understand, but the big question that when it comes to metrics is, does this metric help me cause change? So follow me where I'm going with this. Does this metric help me cause change? So let's take a look at blood pressure. We all go to the doctor, and let's say, Brian, you and I are having a conversation, and I'm giving you a warning to put you on mute. If you were to go to the doctor, and the doctor would take your blood pressure, very important blood pressure, basically tells you if you're alive, dead, sick, or healthy. And let's say the doctor says, okay, Brian, your blood pressure is a little bit high. I'm going to need you to lower that for me. In fact, I'm going to need you to hurry up because I got some clients coming in. What would be your response to hearing that?
You got to hurry up, or you got to lower. I'd say, well, how do I do it? And what do you mean you have other clients come in?
So first of all, you wouldn't say, oh my gosh, it's supposed to be lower? I didn't know that. Wow, you're a genius, doc. Thanks. Hold on a second, and then you lower it. So it's one of those conversations that you say, okay, well, no, duh, I know it's supposed to be lower. I came to you for help, right? And then, of course, now with a little bit of pressure to hurry up, it doesn't help because I haven't given you anything to do as a result of it. So the question is, it's an important metric because it tells you if you're alive, dead, sick, or healthy, but does it cause change? Can you make a change? And the answer is no. And so when we look at, there we go. Sorry, it feels like this piece right here. The sales manager comes up. What's the difference between the sales manager walking in and saying, hey, Brian, wow, sales are low. I need you to go sell more. And we're coming to the sales manager for help, but there's no bridge. There's no pathway for us to get any further. I love the visual, and if you've seen the movie Office Space, we all know what this means. That manager comes in and says, yeah, we're going to need you to sell more. Now, the problem with this conversation is that the response, even as it relates to the blood pressure, is that no one's going to be surprised or saying, wow, that was genius. The same way this loan officer is not going to say, wow, I'm supposed to sell more? Wow, you're a genius, Mr. Sales Manager. I didn't know that. And in fact, what it actually becomes an extremely disempowering conversation and almost shameful conversation because there's no result or anything that's put in place. What I'm proposing is sales managers need to come in and say, here's the bridge on how to get there. So let's take a look at what the Mayo Clinic does with the same scenario. You go into the Mayo Clinic, and the Mayo Clinic takes the blood pressure, obviously, and says, okay, Brian, the blood pressure is a little bit high, but hey, you know what? Don't worry about it. Here's what I want you to do. I want you to follow this 3-step process. I want you to breathe in for 3 seconds, and I want you to breathe out for 4. I want you to breathe in for 3. Let's practice, and we breathe in, breathe out, and I catch your metrics, and I say, you know, Brian, that was 2 in and 2 out. I need you to be 3 in and 4 out. And what happens if you actually do that for about 10 minutes? What would happen to your blood pressure?
I'd imagine it'd probably go down.
It'd probably go down. And the reason is I gave you a metric of something that you can actually cause change to, which is your breathing, and you can control it. And so if you breathe in, 4 out, it has an indirect effect to it. And so the question that we beg to ask, of course, obviously, is what's the breathing of selling? What's that thing that no matter what is going on in my career, if I'm in a sales slump, whatever it is, that I can always go back and control? What's that metric? And so I go back to the sales math concept. If you look at these things and take a wild guess, obviously the talk-tos is that breathing. It's that piece. If somebody says, well, what about applications? I say, great, stop what you're doing and go take a nap. And I'd say, well, I really can't because I'm not around. I say, okay, so then presentations. Well, present. Well, who are you going to present to? Somebody who's a lead. The only thing that we can control is the amount of people that we talk to. And obviously, and this is why I love what you're going to be talking about, Brian, is that your language, your sequence of psychology, the things that you're doing is going to bring that conversion ratio of talk-tos probably to a higher level. But I'm excited to take some notes on what it is you're talking about. And so this is really just to get clear on what we mean by those fundamental pieces is how do we talk to people. And then obviously the clear connection to mortgage coaches, that's what a phenomenally powerful way to actually have a talk to a presentation that converts even more when you have something more powerful. But we'll get to that in a minute. So here's another question. Just ask you guys and answer this in your head. I've got 2 baseball players here. In your mind, which one of these do you think is going to do better? You got the one over here that's got on the left side that's got a horrible baseball swing, and you got on the right side here that practices the perfect baseball swing each and every time. And I mean, it's just an ideal swing. And I ask this question to thousands of people, and more often than not, I always get people saying the guy on the right practicing the baseball swing. Well, the person who's going to do better is actually the guy in the game. He may have a horrible baseball swing, but he's actually in the game. The guy on the right's not even in the game. That's stuck trying to learn too many products, getting stuck in what we call over-preparing. And so I talk about that piece to say, okay, we're looking at the beginning when we understand our sales math. Anytime we're starting with people, we say, let's make up in numbers what we lack in skill. Let's look at activity results in the beginning. Later on, we'll work on quality of results, which is the conversion ratio within each one of those activities. But in the beginning, the activity, that's the thing we want to focus on. And later on, we'll work on the quality. So I know so many people that have this amazing Hall of Fame swing, but they never get out on the actual field to play. They're stuck behind closed doors. They're great with people, but they don't ever get out to bat. And so I want to identify the difference between those people and what we're talking about is what I call the order taker. And the order taker is somebody that facilitates a transaction that would have happened anyways versus, and I also call them vending machines, and vending machines get very, very lonely when interest rates go high. Versus a sales professional is somebody who creates sales by uncovering value that's not seen. And so very big difference between the red and the green. I also call the order taker somebody who's an externally focused victim. They look at the external world and they're a victim of it, so they say things like the market is slow, therefore I'm not selling as much. The professional says, or their professional has what we call an internally focused proactive, and they say things like I need to make more phone calls and start asking for more deals. Very different philosophy. The victim says, yeah, they need to give me better pricing. I get better pricing, I'll sell more. The proactive professional says, I need to ask better questions and add more value. The victim says, yeah, Rene, I know how to overcome that objection. Where the professional says, wait, how'd you overcome that objection? They pull out their voice recorder and they record it and practice it because they're never done learning. So when we look at this piece, we know that we all fall on both of these sides, and obviously when interest rates go low, we tend to fall on this order taker side because we have to gather that business, and I'm all for it. But let's not lose sight of what happens on this green side. And we all know where more money is being made, where actually clients are even happier, is over on the green side. So let's define a few terms before we get into this, and I can definitely open it up for questions on this next piece. But a sales activity, it's something that we control. It's proactive. It's not something that happens to you. So if I pick up the phone and call somebody, it's a sales activity. If somebody calls me, it's not a sales activity. That's called great marketing or luck, either way. And so if we think about the sales process of getting a lead, we take that lead to following different dependent events, kind of how we talked about before, into close, then we know that those 6 steps are activities, things that we control. And that's such an important thing as sales professionals to have is to understand what we can and what we cannot control. Last time I checked, most of us don't get a salary, so we've exchanged our predictable income in exchange for us wanting to have some control over our life and the way we spend it. Now, that's a good thing, but it can also be a devastating thing if we don't spend that time in the right places. And so those activities are the dependent events that need to happen to get to close. So the next two words, which have become probably the two most important words that I share with my clients, it came from a great book called Action Selling. And he talks about what's called a commitment objective. And a commitment objective has a long definition, but it's actually worth really understanding. It's the goal of each selling activity. So if I'm looking at activity 1 to activity 2, there's a goal in between each one of these that requires the client to make a commitment. And so this goal requires a commitment that both of us have to agree to take an action that will let us both move forward to the next step in the sales process. This is what probably is responsible for most slow sales cycles. Why sales professionals don't sell, or why salespeople don't sell, is because they don't understand their CO. They don't understand their commitment objective, why they're engaging in something. I hear people go to networking events all the time, and I'll ask, okay, great, what's your objective? What's your commitment objective? And they say, well, it's just a meet and greet. And immediately I know it's a waste of time for them and anybody they talk to, because there's no objective for going there. When I sold cookware door to door for 5 years, this is $2,500 out of cookware. And when we worked a trade show, we had only one way to measure success, and that was through a ruler. How high was our stack of leads? And when we knew that it wasn't to go sell something, make appointments, it was literally to just generate leads and give out free gourmet dinners. And if we knew we had that, we could call and set the appointments and follow our process. But we were clear on what our commitment objective was. Challenge is commitment objectives, they change from activity to activity. So from 1 to 2, it's different than from 2 to 3, and from 3 to 4, and 4 to 5, and so on. And so we need to get clear on not only what the activities are, but also what the objective is, or the milestone in between each of these activities. And you heard me talk about non-negotiables in the past. When I say non-negotiables, I mean that whether you understand what I'm about to go through or what I'm talking about, whether you've seen it before, it doesn't matter. You're already engaging in it. If you've ever made a sale, you've engaged in these activities. And so I ask people all the time, I say, have you ever watched another salesperson that has access to the same training, the same books, the same pricing, the same products as you do, but for some reason they're selling so much more? And it feels like you're running just as hard as they are, but it feels like you're not going anywhere while they're just collecting. And it comes down to productivity. And productivity is measured about what activities actually drive value. There's so many ways to be busy. And I can't stress this enough. There's so many ways to be busy, and it's so easy to confuse being busy with being productive. And it couldn't be further from the truth. So part of what I'm trying to do is shine a light on these things that say these are the only 6 ways that you make money. When I was taught these skills, it was something that my manager said, Rene, anything else that you do is a complete waste of time. And he asked me, he said, Rene, are you a for-profit or non-profit? I said, well, I'm a for-profit. I said, so then you have to understand how to make money. This doesn't make you greedy. This doesn't make you anything. This is just about understanding that you're in business, you have expenses, you have bills, but now for you to be able to make money, you have to add value, and more value than what you're asking for. Those were just fundamental lessons that were there, but also what they did for me is they made it okay for me internally to think about sales process. And anytime that I'm off sales process, it created such a pain of knowing that I was wasting my time. And here's the thing. When you waste your time at work, really what you're, because the only thing that you invest, and we talked about productivity, what you're investing is your time and your energy. And if you're investing money, that's great. But if you waste that, you're wasting time and energy. Let's just say money you can always get back, but time and energy, let's just even talk about time. Who are you taking that from? You're taking that from your family, your friends, your hobbies, your life. And so this becomes something very important about how you spend your time every day to be successful. And so lead, this is another conversation we get into. I'm not going to go into it deep here, but I can't tell you how many startups or how many CRMs I've been a part of helping create. And this is the first question I ask is, how do you define a lead? Every loan origination software defines it very differently, but every sales professional defines it, as I know, as an either potential client or potential referral source that expresses interest in doing business with you. And you have to have the name, number, email address, all that stuff. But a lead is somebody who expresses interest, and we got to convert that lead into something else. And so let's look at 2 different people. I'll tell you a story about a person in red and a person in blue. The person in red has a defined sales process. They love their customer. They love customer service. They will go anywhere and to any lengths to make sure that they're offering the highest level of service. And truth is, this person's extremely busy. They have a hard time making it to baseball games and basketball games and soccer games, but they're hard time returning phone calls, because dad's busy. And when we look at person in blue here, who also loves their customer and seems to return every phone call, and they think, why wouldn't I return a phone call? It makes no sense. But they wouldn't take somebody's, anything that didn't fit in their process, they probably wouldn't engage in. So let me ask you, which of these two, or what, excuse me, not which of these two, what is the real difference between these two? And when I ask that question, everybody says, well, one has a defined process, one doesn't. One life is simpler, one is not. And those are all true. But those reasons and rationales aren't sexy enough to sell you on the importance of sales process. And let me say that one more time. We all know that one is defined, one is not, but it's not going to be enough to go, oh man, I need to go do that. The real difference is this, and I want you to kind of let this sink in. The real difference is this: 1 sale, 2 sales, 3 sales, 4 sales to that person's 1 sale. Think about that for a minute. I'm going to let you watch that one more time. The difference is 1 sale, 2 sales, 3 sales, 4 sales to the other one's 1 sale. How many times have we felt like we're running and everyone else is selling so much more than we are? And we don't understand. It's the same 24 hours in the day. It's the same interest rates. Why is it that they're selling more? And the reason comes down to is they're clear on their path on what we call commitment objective and sales process. It's not intangible. It's extremely tangible. It's not something magical. It's actually something very, very simple. And I'm going to share with you what those 6 activities are here in a second. And if you can do that, salesboard.com shows that if you can identify your commitment objective, you can actually reduce your sales cycle time by 25%. Why is that important? Because that gives you an extra 3 months of sales time or 3 months of income without taking the 3 months. That's true sense of efficiency. So let's take a look at this next piece, and I'm going to give you these 6 activities. Okay, so prepare yourself because these are really profound. And I'm being facetious as I say that. So the first one, obviously, and remember, these are dependent events. These are really not negotiable. It's prospecting. We have to prospect. We have to set appointments. This is why I'm so excited about what Brian's going to be talking about next here, because he's going to show you a fantastic way to set appointments. Presentation of value. That's why I'm a huge fan of Mortgage Coach, because I still strongly believe there is no better presentation tool for showing and sitting down with clients. Third is gaining commitment. That's your close. 5th is aftercare. That's the follow-up. There's some fantastic tools for aftercare and follow-up. And 6 is getting referrals. So those are the 6 money-making activities. Okay. Every group I work with, I force them to memorize this. And if my son was around, I'd actually put him on the line and say, he's 15. He memorized these at 13. I say, Alex, what are the 6 money-making activities? And he knows each one of them. And he learned them. If my 15-year-old can learn these, so can you. So let's take a look at these, and this is kind of a little test here, okay? So I want you to ask yourself, we're going to go into what's the activity, the money-making activity, then we're going to go into the commitment objective, and then, just Dave, so this would be my last slide, and we can talk about Elevate and stuff. So the activity, what's the first one? Obviously is prospecting. So let's ask yourself, what's the purpose of prospecting? Has one purpose only, is to generate a lead. Generate a lead, and that's for somebody that expresses interest. So I want you to ask yourself, grab a business card, say, I got this lead. What do I do with it? What's the activity they engage in? What people will say, well, get an app. No. You don't get an app from a lead. You actually have to set an appointment with that lead before you can even get there. And what's the objective of the activity of setting appointments? Is you get date, time, and place. Just these 2 areas, if I test people, about 80% of people fail in being able to answer those because they skip over them as, oh, of course I do that. But it seems like, oh yeah, of course I do that. But when we forget that that's the case, I have people all the time in the conversation of setting an appointment where their objective is to get a date, time, and a place, and they start selling. They start doing all sorts of things that have nothing to do with solidifying the time to be able to show up so that then they can present value. Now, sometimes this happens on the first phone call. People are like, hey, I got a lead, and you call them, hey, yeah, this is a great time, so you got a date time, which is now, and you start presenting value. If that's the time and best place for you to present value, great. If you're recruiting over the phone, probably not the best time. I would want to get them in person. Whatever it is that you're trying to accomplish, that presentation of value has 3 objectives. 1, build credibility, differentiate yourself, and gain trust. Why? So imagine trying to do step 4, which is gaining commitment, when you're not credible and you're the same as everyone else and they don't trust you. It's going to be impossible. So if you show that you're credible, you can show that you're different, and they trust you, it's much easier to gain the commitment. Now, differentiation, I'm just going to give you my definition of that. A lot of people say, well, it's to be different, and I say, well, great, why don't you show up in a clown suit to your meeting? You'll definitely be different. And that's not the definition of differentiation. Differentiation has a very specific definition, and it's this. It's the ability to sell your product or service without having to lower its price. The ability to sell your product or service without having to lower its price, that's differentiation. So if you're different enough that you don't have to offer a discount, look at Apple. Black Friday, try to buy a Apple product on discount on Black Friday. It's not going to happen. I've tried. And I learned really quickly that Apple doesn't negotiate on price because they don't have to. So gaining commitment, how do we get that? We have a signature, some sort of skin in the game. That's the commitment objective. The next one is aftercare, which is now, think about presentation. You're making a promise, gaining commitment. They buy into your promise. Aftercare, deliver on the promise. If you promise service, give the service for the purposes of creating raving fans and wow experiences. This is a very big piece that I talk a lot about, is how do you create those wow experiences? If you've done that well, you get referrals, and if you get a referral, you go back to the top to set an appointment. So that right there is the 6 money-making activities in how we do this. This is the beginning of a sales process. This is what you go through. The question is, do you go through this process efficiently? And if you can get clear on how to go through this process more efficiently, imagine what that will do to your service levels, imagine what that will do to your income, and how that will affect your family, your health, everything else. So that's it for that portion of it, Dave. If you want to jump in and we want to talk about Elevate, but I can open up for questions as well.
Well, first of all, it's been fantastic. We've had a lot of great feedback come in through chat. Folks, yes, this was recorded, so you will be able to watch the recording of this in our YouTube channel. And Rene, if you could forward me the slides afterwards,
Sure.
We'll convert them into a PDF. And folks, in the handout section of this GoToWebinar control panel, we will have the handouts for both Brian's presentation that's coming up within minutes and what we did with Rene. So folks, I'm a huge fan. I think, well, a lot of this was basic. Let's face it, we all need reminders. I mean, I've been selling my entire life. I like to think I'm a process-driven sales leader, but I can use reminders, and I got some great takeaways. So thank you, Rene. Rene, you got a big event coming up, Elevate. I'm going to be there. Joe Patur, our president's going to be there. We're getting behind this. We're rolling out the Spanish version of the total cost analysis at this event. So it's pretty exciting for us. If you wouldn't mind just giving folks a high-level overview real quick, and then Brian, be on standby because I'm going to share your desktop in just a few minutes. Rene?
Absolutely. Well, we couldn't be more excited about the Elevate Mortgage Summit. NAREP is the National Association of Hispanic Real Estate Professionals, but they're far more than just being a Hispanic organization. They've got over 26,000 members. 30% of them are in the mortgage industry, and they came to me and said, we want to do a mortgage event that isn't just for Hispanics. It's really to show that we're doing something different in the industry, I think. And so we looked at this event, and I shared with them the 6 money-making activities. So the entire event is really designed around these 6 points. And each speaker is designed and chosen to talk about each one of these elements. So you've got people like, we get to him real quick, well, Darren Hardy, David Stevens, President CEO, but Darren Hardy is a fantastic, and I think, Dave, you've had him on your show before. Is that what you said? Yeah,
well, not only have we had Darren, Darren and I did an interview a couple of weeks ago. We're launching his Insane Productivity for Mortgage Coach members, and we have our formal announcement on the 7th of next month. So yeah, we're doing a lot with Darren. He's a big player in our community, and folks, I think what's special, if you're listening to this call, even if you've heard Darren, bring someone from your team. This is going to be one of those events where you want to bring a couple members of your team, your production partner, and knowing the tie-in that there'll also be realtors there. Maybe the mortgage event isn't for realtors, but I do think it could be a great experience from a team perspective.
We're going to have a lot of realtors there as well, and so but to your point, Darren's going to close out the event. You've got Steve Harney, which you and I both are huge fans of, and I think is from presentation material and the infographics and current information. He's going to be giving some great presentation of value stuff. We've got myself kicking it off and ending it. Sue Woodard. We're having some really fun pieces that are happening there. The last slide. I don't know if you can see it there. If you can put there you go. Yeah, perfect. Yeah, just hit register. If you go to elevatemortgagesummit.org, O-R-G, and you know what? I think, Dave, I can give away a discount here. I might get in trouble for it, but I have because this event is limited at at 800 people, but for I think it's till the 25th. I have a discount there. If you put in Rene 100, RENE 100 in your discount code, you get $100 off. And for $50 more, you can actually go to the NAREP convention, which has over 4,000 real estate agents attending. So I tell people, go learn what you can from the Elevate event and take all those learnings directly into the NAREP National Convention. But if you use that code Rene100, it should give you $100 off.
Beautiful. So let's Rene, let's make sure we put a link to that in the go to webinar control panel, and Marcy, if Rene doesn't do it, if you can make sure he does it. So we'll put that in the chat. Rene, you completely crushed it. Obviously, the concept of presenting value, building credibility, differentiation, and trust is near and dear to my heart. Everybody on this call, you all have Mortgage Coach. You all have the ability that when a family is getting into mortgage debt to give them options that show up on their mobile devices. And when you're meeting with a realtor, you have the ability to, what Todd would call high trust story selling, explain to them how you're different, how you're better, and how their families are going to be better served. And at the end of the day, not only will the families be better served, but you'll get more referrals and your agents will get more referrals. So let's transition. We're going to really focus for the next 25, 30 minutes on setting appointments. I do want to set expectations with folks. We're running about 5 minutes behind. So I think there's a good chance with Brian we're going to go over a little bit. So just a heads up on that. So Brian, I'm sure you could do a lot of, I don't know, takeaways, questions for Rene. If you have some quick ones that you want to tee things up on, I'm fine with that. But I'm also fine with let's just get into your piece of the puzzle and how you're going to help folks get meetings and get to a point where they can deliver more value at the presentation stage.
Well, I liked a lot of what Rene said. I mean, when he was breaking down kind of the, hey, just get on the court, or he had the metaphor for the baseball player. I was thinking, oh yeah, definitely the guy who has the fundamentals, and that made a lot of sense when you're starting out. And as you further develop, having an actual process in the system, will be a better stage, for you, or something that's more important for you to focus on. So I thought that was really interesting, and a lot of what he said. And I was actually listening to somebody who has 2 billion views on YouTube, and he was doing this presentation, and he was talking about, as you said something like, oh, what you learned was basic, earlier, Dave, you mentioned that, and what this person was saying was, whenever you hear something that's like commonly known as true, or like, oh yeah, I know that, or tell me something I don't know, that's when he actually will lean in, right? Because if it's something that's commonly held as true and it makes a lot of sense, it's like, okay, I need to pay more attention, because am I really doing what's most important? And it's kind of the difference between knowledge and action, which Rene talked about too. I'll be talking about today. Let's make this hidden. How can you get like 1 lead a day? Not 100, not 10, just 1 qualified lead every single day. I break down sales into 2 parts. Now within that, there's obviously more parts, but what do you do to open the sale? What do you do to close the sale? Primarily, my issue in sales, because I've always worked in startups, was always getting that first meeting. How do I open the sale? How do I find the lead? And so that's what we're going to be talking about. Personally, I can't read your responses to this, but Dave can. But how many leads per month would you like? And how many sales per month? And if Dave can kind of let me know, what people are saying, or what you guys are saying, how many leads, do you want a month, and how many new sales do you want a month, just to kind of get an idea, because we want to create some context for what we're going to be talking about, and when we're talking about email. Dave, any idea as far as how many leads and sales people would like? Can you read that?
So first of all, not nearly as much participation as we want. So folks, it's really simple. So far we've got at least 8 to 10 sales per month, 25, 75 leads, 15 sales, 40 leads per month, and 10 sales per month. Come on, folks, let's play ball. Here we go. Michael Barnes says 100 leads. Brian Rice says 15 leads, 15 sales. Wow, 100% conversion, Brian. That's we're gonna have to get the mic on you in a minute here, or maybe you might want to update the leads versus sales. 40 versus 20, 25 versus 10. I'm seeing conversion rates all over the place, guys. We could probably have a whole coaching session on that. By the way, folks, this is what I'm talking about. Mortgage coach community. Everybody on the call is interacting. I can't even keep up. But Brian, netting it out, it looks like 100 leads a month seems to be the cap. I see a few folks under 20 leads a month. But let's just say we've got some pretty ambitious people shooting for 100, and we've got a lot of folks in the 15 to 20 range. I'll hand it back to you.
Okay, so it's anywhere from like almost 1 lead a day to probably, if we're just thinking, working days, if you want 100, say it's 20 days in a month, you're looking at 5 leads per working day. And actually, one thing, I got a text message from a good friend. I grew up in Sonoma, California. He was, good buddies with my brother, played basketball, ended up going to University of Reno, Tony Mall, and he was like a tight end. And then like in one summer, he gained like 80 pounds, and they made him an offensive lineman. And then like 2 years later, he actually made the Green Bay Packers. And so he was a football player for a number of years on a couple different teams, and he's a member of your group. And he's like, Dave's a great guy. I'm on the call. The mortgage tools, I use it daily with realtors and clients. And he now works. He's on the call. So Tony, great to have you here. He works at Pinnacle Capital Mortgage, and he's a mortgage banker. So NFL star, and now he is a mortgage banker. So it's pretty awesome.
High fives, Tony, man. Thanks for the shout out, and it's great to hear that you're crushing it on the mortgage coach team.
So these are just some of the notes. Kyle Bento, your recent webinar with HubSpot was spot on. Just discovered your email strategies and templates, cold email strategies. I wish I had those hours I had in college, generating $1 billion in cold email. The reality is phone usage is down. Things are changing in the market. So the average American speaks 25 minutes a day on the phone. Japanese, Germans, even less, 3 or 4 minutes. Cold calling, when people are making calls, it takes about 52 dials and 18 dials to actually connect with the buyer. And then the callback rates are only at 1%, right? So if you leave a voicemail, only 1 out of every 100 is actually going to call you back. Last year, Coca-Cola and JP Morgan, I know this isn't, JP Morgan, could be relevant to you guys, but and these are not necessarily your clients, but the trends are they actually shut down voicemail for all their employees. So Coca-Cola, JP Morgan, the employees were more than happy to let go of voicemail. And I talked to somebody, and she's like, listen, I haven't checked voicemail in 10 years because I know it's always salespeople, calling me. The issue here, and I called for, 9 years of cold calling. I called for a year straight. And I was always looking for a better way. Really, the fundamental issue is it's the pickup rate, right? So they're not picking up. So 95% of people aren't going to pick up when you call. So they have to call you back. And the reality is, like, how many times have you bought something when a telemarketer called you at dinner? And how did you feel about that relationship? Because, when you're in sales or you're a mortgage banker, if you're cold calling, fundamentally your parents didn't send you to college to become a telemarketer. And it's just, there's better ways to develop relationships with people. From what I've seen, it actually takes 3 seconds for somebody to decide what to do when they receive an email from you, and they're going to make a one of 3 decisions. They're either going to delete it, they're going to read it, or they're going to ignore it. And this is a template. It's called the permission to close your file template. Rick was talking about it, so I want to walk you through this template. So when people aren't responding to your contacts, so this is, imagine you're trying to reach somebody and they're just, no matter what you do, you can't get this person to respond. This is the email that we'll send, and we can get a 76% response rate for people that historically have totally fallen off the face of the earth and stopped responding to you. And the psychology here is you need to actually flip what you would normally do. So normally you're going to write an email like, hey, I'm just writing to check in, want to see how your weekend was, hope you had a great time at, like whatever you're trying to remember. And what you want to do is you actually want to do the opposite. So I'm writing to follow up on my email, voicemail, like whatever happened. We're in the process of closing files for the month. Typically when I haven't heard back from someone, it means they're either really busy or aren't interested. If you aren't interested, do I have permission to close your file? If you are still interested, what do you recommend as the next step? So what you're doing here is you're saying like, hey, is it over? If so, that's okay. And you're also giving them the space by saying, hey, I'm not making you wrong. You're probably not responding because you're really busy. And what will happen is either somebody who is interested will write you back right away and will respond, or they'll say, hey, I'm not interested, thanks so much. The benefit there is you just don't have to spend the mental energy. So Joe went out, sent this email, just wanted to let you know of an early win. I've been prospecting as I get my copywriting agency off the ground. Before getting your course last week, there was a cold email, or there's a cold lead I'd follow up with for 2 months with no response. Sent them a close your file email this morning after ripping it from one of your coaching calls. You provided, by lunchtime, the meeting was set, and I'm presenting in front of the decision maker and the team in 2 weeks. We'll keep you posted. So this email is it works like magic. So it's one of those instances where you can actually use a template. You can't use a template when it comes to cold emailing, but you can when it comes to follow-ups. And the reason there is because, yeah.
Hey, I want to jump in on a couple notes. So one,
Sure.
I've had a number of mortgage professionals from the last call that we did pile on with success stories of how they've used this with a family that's gone cold on them, and anything from they've got a response with clarity on why they didn't go with them. So also we've implemented this in our sales process here at Mortgage Coach. So there's a whole lot of loan officers that we're able to help because we've just been able to net it out. So we're using this. I've heard lots of feedback from loan officers that are getting success, and while I think there was a lot of great takeaways from Rene, this call is full of great ideas. I mean, this is a huge idea. Hopefully you take action. One last ask to the community. If you have implemented this strategy or any of the ideas from Brian from past interviews that we did, let me know what kind of success you're having, and share that in questions right now. I would love a little more engagement from our community around some of the things that Brian's been teaching us. So jump in and add some value. Rene, we're going to bring you in about 5 minutes just to pull out, either ask Brian a question or provide some of your color around it. But Brian, keep rolling.
So let's see. And one thing I'm condensing an hour into 20 minutes, so we'll have to go quick. The reality is Silicon Valley is using email all over the place. People are getting all kinds of meetings, with people like, Mark Cuban, Cruise, this company that had $1 billion exit. They started out with a cold email. It's launching careers, and it's also launching some young, inexperienced entrepreneurs, salespeople, to really to connect with people. And what I've found is the key to cold emailing, there's really two. There's one, it's who you're going to write to, right? Who's actually predisposed to want to work with you, want to buy, is going to make your sales life much easier because they actually need what you have. And then the second is the messaging. I love this from someone, how one cold email changed my life forever. But we're going to take some notes right now. This is an email that was sent to Mark Cuban, and within an hour, Mark Cuban, wrote back, definitely interested, send me more of the details, and they ended up getting a bunch of funding. But I want to share that email. So this is Ben Sardella of Kissmetrics. I'm a first-time entrepreneur, and I just started to build my product. I'm looking for experts in the space, and several of my friends pointed in your direction. So I was hoping you could give me feedback before I spent too much time building something that nobody wants. And this is called the customer development process. Here's my idea. I have a crawler that crawls millions, and so then they explained it. Thanks in advance. So what they're not asking for is they're not asking for the sale. They're just asking for advice. And in funding, they'll say, if you want funding, ask for advice. And if you want funding, ask for advice. And if you want advice, ask for funding. So, just kind of doing the opposite. This is an email from Darren. Good news, I received a $30,000 order from a client with approximately $4,000 commission today. That came from breakthrough email 1 and initial meeting. Woohoo! We should continue to receive periodic orders several times per year as well. So that's just the initial order for somebody. My background, cold calling, I'd sit at my desk and would move around papers. So it actually I would organize the folders on my desktop, so I didn't have to make cold calls. I would do anything I could possibly do, so I don't have to make cold calls. And I was trying to reach directors of marketing and essentially begging them. The issue was they would punt me down to the agency. I was selling media at the time, and the agency would write these letters to me after about 9 months in a sale, like, hey, sorry, Brian, you weren't included on the plan. I called into the agency and asked them, listen, why wasn't I on the plan? And after some prodding, it turns out I was actually never presented. They had 2 plans. What we were doing was never presented to the end decision maker. So whenever I went into the organization, all the effort, all the sales, I never actually got in front of the buyer. So it's like trying to sell a 16-year-old, 16-year-old a red Mustang when really mom and dad are the buyer. So I made a decision at that point that I have to do something else. And this is pretty much what my life looked like, because I didn't have the meetings. I worked for a startup, and I had to go out and I had to find the meetings. And the average person that I was trying to contact had 2,000 sales reps. And they were getting hundreds of emails every day. So this is called the waterfall technique. So I thought of, okay, what do I know about the situation? I know that everybody has a boss. I know that they have to look good in their boss's eyes. So if I'm trying to reach the director of marketing, I shouldn't actually write the director of marketing. I should write everybody above them and then just get delegated down by the VP of marketing and CMO. So what happened was I would get the ear of these executives that no one got their ear. And I want to share some of the emails. So this is a template. You can just Google breakthrough. You just Google cold email template, and it will be one of the first results on Google, or cold email template and Brian, and you'll find this. I kind of break this down. We don't really have time to go through the different elements of the template, but even changing the word order, or the word, say from calendar to schedule, increases the response rate, because people, when they think in terms of schedule, they think of to-dos, the to-do list and hours in the day. When you think of calendar, you think of weeks and months. So if somebody asks you, how does your calendar look? Your calendar is open or free in a couple weeks. If you ask them how your schedule looks, your schedule is busy. So word choice, makes a huge difference. The reality is there's 144 billion emails sent every year in 1996. Now in 2016, there's 144 billion emails sent every day. So there's 365 times more email. Average employees getting 115. CEOs like Tim Cook are getting 700 to 800. CEO of Apple, he wakes up at 3:45 in the morning just to check his email. And everyone's trying to get in touch. So my rule of thumb is I need to be in the top 2%. I want to create a credible opportunity. I'm not talking all about myself. What I want to do is I actually want to create a credible opportunity and be in the top 2% of all the emails that they get. Now, the average employee actually checks their email. That's incorrect. It's 36 an hour. So the average employee is in their email 36 times in 1 hour all day long, checking it 288 times a day. This is a note from Adrian. I'm a freelance video producer and have been in a dry spell. A week and a half ago, while researching cold email, I came across your free template named, Cold Email Template 2.0 Revised. Having already compiled a list of about 50 prospects, I decided to use your template. The first prospect called me within an hour of receiving the email. The second never responded. The third emailed me back 2 days later this morning and requested a meeting this coming Monday. That's when I knew I'd purchase your course. The email you sent earlier today about the price raise served as a reminder. Here's an email from Mark, and let's look at this email. I'm writing in hopes of finding the appropriate person who handles marketing. I also wrote to this person in that pursuit. If it makes sense to talk, let me know how your calendar looks. Value proposition. Right now he's going into why do you, what's in it for you? Here's the email he got back. And this is from GSK Novartis, which is a huge billion-dollar company. Thanks, Mark, for sending an email with actual details about your product. I get about 900 solicitations a day, and I never know what the vendor can do for me. Can you show me an example of the ad? Mark wrote this to me later. He got a team in the Philippines to actually send out emails for him, and there's some systems you can use to send out emails. The key is you need to get the messaging right, because no one's going to respond unless the messaging is correct. I sent out an email this morning to Fortune 1000 customers across a handful of verticals and have been averaging a response a minute since 8:40 a.m. when the campaign started. Freddie is all over it. I'm sitting back and enjoying the day. Freddie is his guy in the Philippines that runs these campaigns and sends all the emails. This one's from Patty. This is the email that she sent. I'm hoping you can connect me to the appropriate person at TD who's responsible for digital customer engagement. Our platform is enabling banks to acquire new customers and cross-sell their products by quickly transforming all their accounts, opening, and loan applications into omni-channel, mobile responsive experiences. Some clients like Citi and Capital One, and then benefits. So she's going right into the benefits of working. Here's the response. Good afternoon, Patty, and thanks for the email. I'm not the right person for this at TD. However, I do know who the right person is, Mike, and then shared the name. His role is in strategy and planning, area digital channels, and can be contacted. Gave him the number. For ease, I have also copied him in this note. I mean, how often do we get emails where people make our life so easy? And this, using the waterfall technique, is by design, right? We know we're looking to get leverage what their internal knowledge of their own network is and all their employees and point us in the right direction, because if you're not selling to the person who can actually buy from you, it really, all the other sales activities don't really matter. Here's Patty Lever response. Now that is how you do it. See email thread below. I'm using mass cold emails to refer to the right person, and then I go one-on-one to the right person to get a meeting. And then she goes into, this is what her boss said. To answer your question from the other email, the VP of Sales at Evoca, that's her company, told me last week I'm single-handedly quadrupling their revenue of a 12-year-old company, and the CMO and CEO invited me to come into the office today for a job offer. I've been doing this work as a 1099 contractor. I told them I only want to do this 30 to 35 hours a week, and they said that was fine. So this person is now the top candidate. She's shifting everything for the company, and the company's noticing. Here's an example of kind of a normal email that somebody would send. I left you a voicemail, but this is something that somebody would send before going through our training. I left you a voicemail, but I thought connecting through email might be easier. I did some research on your company and believe that you would be the right person to speak with regarding supplier vendor risk management. Our clients include some of the largest, and this is like a snooze fest, right? All the person has to do is delete, because the other person just doesn't care about you. And all the emails that I look at, kind of the first round of emails, people write all about themselves, and the other person that you're writing to, they only care about themselves. And I love this email from Trudy. Trudy's I don't know if you can see her image, but she's like a grandma. And she's like, those are all, as you commented, poorly done. During this year, I've consistently been receiving cold emails, and frankly, they're annoying. It's quite obvious that they're just emailing in bulk with no thought to the business size or possible need of the person company is receiving. I delete them. I equate it to someone throwing seeds out in some dirt and hoping something sprouts. Keeping up this practice will lead to starvation. This is a spray and pray approach, which is what most people do, and ultimately, you need the right message to get somebody to respond. This is what people are thinking when they actually open your email. Is it for me? Do I understand? Do I care? Is it worth my time? And what should I do? Tim just sent first cold emails with his strategy and have a request for a meeting less than 20 minutes after sending. Great tips on how to write a compelling email. It's awesome. Testing breakthrough email templates. Excited to see what happens. They're cold emailing master. I've tried a couple, samples from the webinar. Want to know if the system works. Have you tried the full system? So we have a course. And actually, I talked to Dave. We have a pretty awesome offer today. And this is what you should be getting when you're sending emails. This is a sample that we had done for a company. We did about $4 million in sales, but what I want you to look at is the response rates. So 80% response rate, 46% take a meeting, 26 become a customer or a sale. So these are kind of the benchmarks that I want you guys to hit. So if you're getting 5 to 10% response rate, then the question you have to ask yourself is, what are you not doing that you could be doing to get a higher response rate? And why is 95 or 90% of people essentially saying, hey, I'm not interested? And how do you actually get them interested in what you offer? I wrote 15,000 emails over 7 years, like individual emails, to get people to start responding. So, it's kind of based on a lot of A/B testing. Just bought the system, used the appropriate person a handful of times, already today setting meetings nonstop. Thank you. I got terrific response rate on cold emails. You can get consulting projects, you can get jobs, study the course. These are just kind of stories of people. This is the breakdown. So there's 4 modules of strategy, research, emailing, and I believe that is follow-up. But this is what's actually the process. So you might want to know, like, hey, how long does it take? What's included? What should I expect? It takes about 6 to 8 weeks to set this up. The first thing you're going to do is you're going to interview your customers, because that's where the messaging is. You're going to select the high-value customers. You're going to delegate the work. You can get an intern or somebody in the Philippines to do all the legwork for you. So as Rene said, you actually, you're building systems, and somebody else is out there generating all the leads for you once you develop the messaging, and and anyone can do it. Then you're researching your target, you're getting email responses, you're automating the follow-up, and I'll share a couple of services that are included. You're reverse